Well, good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? How's everybody doing today? Welcome in, everybody. If you are unfamiliar, if you just happen to be scrolling by, you don't know what this is about or why I'm live or what I'm doing, my name is Paul Turner from the discipleproject.net, and I help youth pastors build successful youth ministries. That's what this show is about. This is what my YouTube channel is about. And so welcome today. Hope that you're having a great day today. If you jump in here, let me know where you're from, where you're at, what state, what country. I started doing these at 2 o'clock in the afternoon so that I could reach out to my friends over in the UK who may be just settling down for the evening, having a cup of tea maybe, and just kind of hanging out. And so I am here, excuse me, for them as well. So my goal today, as in every Wednesday, 2 p.m., I try to answer 3 questions that I've been given so that I can answer those questions. If you have a question during this live stream, go ahead and put something in the chat. You can put your question there, or you can, if you're watching this in the future, put it down in the comments there, and I'll be happy to answer that question as well. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into today then with our first question. First question. And this comes from Nate Jacob. Nate Jacobs has been following along on the channel there. By the way, if you're not a subscriber, come hang out, join, and that way you can be notified when I go live and when I put out a video. So be sure to go and click that subscribe button while you're here. But he asks a question. He says, what are some ways to disciple students besides preaching, teaching on typical youth nights? And it's a good question because when you have, preaching, and I've addressed this, there's actually a short that I did where somebody's talking about preaching, and they were talking about the preaching length of time and so forth. And, preaching is one aspect of discipleship, okay? It's one aspect of discipleship. I don't think all preaching is done via, nor should it be done just preaching, because just preaching is very one-sided. It's very me to you, but there is no interaction. And what we see Jesus doing in the scriptures is he's not just preaching. He's not just having, the Mount of Olives, or he's not just doing the Beatitudes. He's bringing his disciples closer, and he's having these conversations with them. And so, other than, I think that, Nate, I'll give you some options, some ideas that I think, as far as other than preaching. Preaching's one aspect of discipleship. It's not the only aspect. There's a lot of people who try to disciple via that, if I just preach and get a student to the altar and pray with them and then release them, then that's it. And that is, quite frankly, just the beginning. And so how do you then, what are some other ways you can use? Well, there's... building those relationships, like I said, with Jesus. Jesus is doing life and doing journey with kids. So, something simple like scheduling trips, right? So when you have a trip with a student or a bunch of students, you're going somewhere with them, right? You're in a van with them for 6 hours, right? Schedule a long distance trip, right? Where you're going to go somewhere, and during those times, you have a student with you, you have a bunch of students with you for about 6 hours. You're going somewhere, and on the way, you're having discussions, you're asking questions, you're doing life with them, right? 1 hour a week, it's just not going to cut it as far as life type stuff, right? As when you're going along with students on the journey. So when you do trips, when you schedule a camp, when you either take kids to camp or when you create your own camp, when you do a weekend retreat, right? You have extended time with them. And so when you're doing that and you're having those conversations with them in the process of that, you're doing discipleship. And once again, if you only have the hour a week, maybe instead of just preaching or doing the lesson, maybe scheduling small groups within there. So in other words, you say, okay, well, we're going to have discipleship. So depending on the size of your group, I have a small youth group. By the way, I'm still a part-time youth pastor of a small youth group. And so I had to change my style from just preaching, teaching to now we're having discussion. right? So I could get up in front of, 15, 20, 25 kids and share a message. But even when I did that, I would make sure that there was a small group time that we would have where either currently in my situation with my group, I will have conversations, right? So it's not just me speaking, it's me asking questions. And if Jesus did anything well, he asked questions. And so I will ask questions of the text, and it'll be part preaching, right, and part teaching, but part small group discussion where they are interactive with the message. Because that way I can kind of know what they're thinking about what I'm saying, and then I can further open up the discussion to where they're at. Well, here we go. We got Steve Case here. Steve says, discipleship happens when you are watching the world's most production of Music Man on Thursday night. Presence is everything. Okay. I get that. I understand that. Presence and everything. Steve makes a great point there. Being with students is a powerful statement that when you're just with kids, right? And there's no agenda per se, right? You don't want to, everything can't be about, well, I'm just going to win you to the Lord and I'm going to do this. And it's very goal driven, right? Whereas if you are just living your life with them and you're just hanging out with them, truth can come across. Truth can be, truth can make its way into conversations. Truth can make its way into all kinds of things. And so other than teaching and preaching, right, is just having these conversations. So you may have to, Nate, retool your Wednesday night and say, okay, how can I have more discussions? You may go ahead and plan some events and activities that are extended times other than that. So plan a retreat, plan camp, plan a trip that's longer than, maybe it's 2 to 3 hours away, right? It's a 2-hour drive and a 2-hour back. So you get 4 hours of whatever you're doing and then the trip you're actually on. So to answer your question, Nate, I think it just requires you to do some retooling to where you can to have an extended time with students where you just get to be with them, where it's not just teaching and it's not just lessons. If you retool your Wednesday night to where it's more discussion driven, where it's not just, or if you're having small groups or multiple small groups, depending on the size of your group. And like I said, sometimes it's just a matter of just hanging around and being a part of kids' lives, showing up to games, right? Showing up to their band practices, showing up to their football games. And even though there is no depth of conversation there, your presence there communicates that you care for them, you love them, you are interested in what they're doing. And funny enough, when you do that, they become interested in what you're saying. And before we get into question 2, though, I do want to show you a resource that a book that I wrote called The Disciple Project Outreach Manual. And it is all about, it is, once again, this is not, I'll say this is not for everybody. This is something I did with my youth group because I wanted that discipleship time with them. And I wanted to take away, the only thing I could do, because students are only going to give you so much time, I made it very much a Wednesday night focus where in the spring or summer, part of the summer, we would go out and actually do the things beyond. I think doing is the greatest teacher, right? So that little tagline at the bottom says, stop the meeting, start the movement, raise up a new generation of doers. That's what I wanted. And the only way that was going to happen, well, the only way I did it in the past was through missions trips, take them out. But then I wanted to do that on a regular basis. So I wanted to do that 3 out of 4 times of a month. So I did it for 3 months, where 3 weeks out of the month, I took them various places, or I sent them off in teams, much like Jesus did when he sent off the 70, and they visited their friends. They prayed. They went to people in our church and prayed for widows. They prayed for the elderly. They did sick visits. They did those things. And I just think that's critically important because it's not entirely about what you believe. It's about what you practice. And so the only time these students are going to practice these things a lot of the time are the opportunities that I give them to do that within the ministry of context of youth ministry. Of course, parents can do this all the time, and parents, are the chief disciplers of their kids. And so we hope that that's going on. But if you're interested in a resource and a book that explains my thoughts and ideas on discipleship and gives you a model, a short-term model that you're interested in, and you can do this not during you can do it on a Wednesday night if you want. I did that because that's the time they gave me. You can fashion it after a weekend. You can do a weekend out of it. You can make a retreat out of it. You can do a half day with it. There's lots of things you can do with it. So if you were interested in that, I will put a link down below and you can check that out for yourself.